In a move that has sent shockwaves through US political and military circles, President Donald Trump has officially signed an executive order renaming the Pentagon, the US Department of Defense, back to its historic moniker, the War Department. This marks the first time since 1947, when President Harry Truman consolidated military operations under the Department of Defense, that the United States has formally used the original designation. The announcement has triggered a flurry of reactions across political spectrums. Critics are calling it warmongering, arguing that the name signals an aggressive, militaristic posture at a time when diplomacy and global alliances are increasingly delicate. Supporters, on the other hand, praise the decision as a restoration of truth and strength, reflecting Trump's characteristic focus on direct messaging, symbolism, and American exceptionalism. Trump framed the change in stark terms. "We won World War I, we won World War II. Then we went woke, changed the name to defense." His words emphasize a narrative of military triumph, strength, and clarity, contrasting the original title's unapologetic acknowledgment of America's engagement in global conflicts with what he perceives as decades of softened rhetoric. The historical context is critical. From the founding of the War Department in 1789 until 1947, the United States had a centralized office overseeing all military operations. The transition to the Department of Defense was part of a post-World War II restructuring aimed at streamlining military command and establishing civilian oversight, reflecting both the scale of modern warfare and the growing complexity of international relations. Trump's decision is therefore not merely a cosmetic adjustment, it is a direct engagement with American history, military identity, and political symbolism. The Pentagon's renaming is occurring amid a highly charged political atmosphere. The US faces a series of domestic and international challenges, from global security threats to partisan debates over defense spending, foreign policy priorities, and military engagement. Against this backdrop, Trump's order has become a lightning rod, prompting analysis about what the symbolic shift means for policy, strategy, and the perception of the US military on the global stage. This video will unpack the breaking news: Trump's rationale, historical context, political implications, and potential future consequences of this dramatic renaming. By the end, viewers will have a comprehensive understanding of why this executive action is more than a headline. It is a statement about America's military identity, leadership style, and the politics of symbolism in the modern era. The story begins with the official announcement. President Trump signed an executive order formally renaming the Department of Defense back to the War Department. The signing ceremony was brief, but laden with symbolism. White House officials highlighted the historical lineage of the term, emphasizing its origin in 1789 during George Washington's administration, when the War Department was the centralized body responsible for organizing, training, and equipping the U.S. Army. For the first time in 76 years, the name War Department will be used in official documents, correspondence, and public communications. This is a monumental shift, not just in terminology, but in national perception and international messaging. Government agencies, defense contractors, military academies, and allied nations are now grappling with what this change might imply. The executive order came at a time of heightened geopolitical tension, making the announcement even more significant. Observers are questioning whether this change is purely symbolic, or whether it foreshadows a more aggressive defense posture, new military initiatives, or increased funding and authority for combat operations. Federal agencies are now tasked with implementing the name change across all departments, offices, and digital platforms, a massive bureaucratic undertaking in its own right. Trump's press release described the change as a restoration of American strength and historical clarity, arguing that the term defense had diluted the perception of U.S. military might over decades. The order instructs all internal communications, military documents, and public-facing materials to adopt the new nomenclature immediately, signaling that this is not a temporary adjustment, but a permanent rebranding of the nation's military identity. Media outlets around the world quickly picked up the story. Headlines ranged from "Trump renames Pentagon, sparks controversy" to "America returns to the War Department," reflecting the polarizing nature of the decision. Analysts began to speculate on potential consequences for military morale, international relations, and U.S. foreign policy credibility. In short, the breaking news is not just the renaming itself, but the immediate global attention and debate it has generated, signaling that this action will have both symbolic and practical implications for years to come. At the heart of this decision is Trump's rhetoric, which frames the renaming as a return to clarity, decisiveness, and American strength. During the executive order signing, Trump stated, "We won World War I, we won World War II. Then we went woke, changed the name to defense. This ends today." This statement reflects several layers of meaning. First, it celebrates American military achievements, positioning the country as a global victor that should proudly acknowledge its capability and willingness to engage in warfare when necessary. Second, it implicitly critiques decades of what Trump calls woke policy, suggesting that the term defense conveys softness or caution rather than assertiveness. Trump's messaging strategy is consistent with his broader political approach: symbolism, clarity, and media-centric communication. By renaming the Pentagon, he is signaling to supporters that the administration values strength, boldness, and a no-nonsense approach to global threats. It also reinforces his reputation as a leader, willing to challenge historical norms and restore what he perceives as the original vision of American institutions. The choice of words has sparked debate. Supporters argue that the term War Department honestly reflects the mission of the U.S. military and removes euphemisms that obscure the realities of combat. Critics counter that the language may project aggression internationally, potentially destabilizing alliances and sending mixed messages to adversaries. Trump's speeches accompanying the order emphasized pride, patriotism, and historical continuity, framing the name change as part of a broader effort to restore American exceptionalism. For his administration, the move is not simply bureaucratic. It is a strategic communication tool, shaping perceptions both at home and abroad. Understanding the historical significance of this renaming requires a deep dive into U.S. military history. The original War Department was established in 1789, serving as the central agency responsible for the Army. During its existence, it oversaw critical conflicts, including the War of 1812, the Mexican-American War, the Civil War, and both World Wars. In 1947, President Truman restructured the military under the National Security Act, creating the Department of Defense. This reorganization was intended to streamline operations, enhance civilian oversight, and reflect the increasingly complex nature of modern warfare. The term defense emphasized a protective, deterrent posture rather than direct aggression, a reflection of post-World War II geopolitical realities and the desire to project stability in the early Cold War era. Trump's decision to revert to the War Department explicitly rejects this post-World War II framing. By doing so, he is engaging in a form of historical revisionism, emphasizing the United States military victories and projecting a message of strength and assertiveness. Historically, this marks a major symbolic shift as it challenges decades of military bureaucracy and policy framing. Historians note that such name changes carry weight beyond symbolism. The language used to describe military institutions shapes public perception, congressional oversight, and international interpretation of military intent. By renaming the Pentagon, Trump is directly influencing how the military is perceived at home and abroad, making this more than a ceremonial act. The announcement has sparked intense debate across political, military, and international spheres. Critics describe the move as warmongering, warning that it could signal a more aggressive U.S. posture at a time when diplomacy and alliance building are crucial. Some lawmakers have raised concerns that the change may complicate relations with NATO partners, potentially undermining decades of cooperative defense policy. On the other hand, supporters praise the decision as a return to honest language and American strength. For them, the Pentagon had become a symbol of bureaucratic overreach and euphemism, and renaming it the War Department restores a sense of purpose, clarity, and accountability. Internationally, the reaction is mixed. Allies are cautious, with some expressing concern that the new terminology may alter perceptions of U.S. military intentions. while rivals may interpret it as a signal of increased assertiveness, potentially affecting global stability. Domestically, the renaming feeds into larger political narratives about American strength, tradition, and the role of symbolism in governance. Trump's decision is consistent with his political brand, emphasizing decisiveness, bold moves, and disruption of established norms, which resonates strongly with his base. Looking forward, questions abound. Does this name change signal real policy shifts, or is it purely symbolic? Military analysts are closely monitoring speeches, budget allocations, and operational directives to determine whether the War Department will pursue a more offensive or aggressive posture in global hotspots. There are also bureaucratic implications. The renaming affects every facet of the department, from letterheads to contracts to signage at bases worldwide. Officials must now implement directives to ensure compliance across all 1.3 million active duty and civilian personnel. This logistical effort alone represents a massive undertaking. Politically, the debate between symbolism versus substance will continue. While the name change is dramatic and historic, the real question is whether it will influence military budgets, foreign policy decisions, or engagement strategies. Allies, adversaries, and domestic audiences alike will be watching closely to see whether this renaming heralds a shift in U.S. defense doctrine or remains primarily a messaging tool. What is clear is that Trump has made history once again, demonstrating his characteristic blend of bold symbolism, political calculation, and media-centric leadership. Whether this move will have lasting policy impact or primarily serve as a statement of intent remains to be seen, but it will undoubtedly be remembered as a defining moment in modern American military history.